my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. Can you hear freedom calling, calling me to answer? Gonna keep on keeping on. I can feel it in my bones.
Good afternoon, good evening. It is, what is it? Today is the 14th of December. It is Advent season. I am Reverend Mark Hughes with the Vermont Racial Justice Alliance, and this is Juxtaposition. I hope I caught you on your way home. I hope you're in your car or maybe watching at home, and you guys are watching along, because we're here to talk today a little bit about Reconstruction, and we made it really simple. I said as we introduced this tonight, what is it and where did it go? Where did Reconstruction go? It's interesting because one of the things that we've been working on is the 13th Amendment. And for those who've been following Reconstruction, that topic that is least taught in our schools is it is the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th Amendments of the United States Constitution that we need to be concerned about, because we didn't have a constitutional convention after the Civil War. It did. And then the other thing is the 14th Amendment was the whole idea of, what do we do about the citizenship, and the whole idea of equal protection under the law, and the 15th Amendment was voting rights. But listen to this about Reconstruction. It says the term Black Reconstruction refers to the actions and activities of both Black and white Americans in the period immediately after the Civil War. It involved the transformation of Southern political, economic, and social institutions in a manner consistent with the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, which collectively established Black freedom and equality. So again, we didn't have a situation where there was a constitutional convention. No, it was just 3 amendments that this was hanging on. We know also that the race riots of 1866, when they erupted, the marchers, they were met by an angry crowd. There's a lot of protests that went on in Richmond, Charleston, New Orleans in 1867, a lot of pushback on Reconstruction. There's always been a lot of pushback on Reconstruction. But, Reconstruction was really a period wherein which Black and brown folks, Black folks specifically in the United States, had more political and economic power than they've ever had in all history, even including today. So that's what's significant, is because, in 1863, there was definitely the 40,000 or so Black folks who were in the South. We always read about the Proclamation of Emancipation. That was just to get Black folks in the military. It was about 40,000 of them in the military. After the South fell, and largely because the recruiting, the Proclamation of Emancipation, after the South fell, there was 4 million folks that they had to figure out what to do with. I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the stuff that we did this year. This is our last session before we get to a point to where we are into the new year. So blessings for everybody carrying into the new year. But I want to tell you a little bit about some of the stuff that we've been doing over the last 4 years. I'm going to spend some time, I'll go back to Reconstruction and just kind of frame up some of this. And in fact, next year, we're going to talk about Reconstruction all year long. What we know is that the PR2, the work we've done on PR2, it had everything to do with the remnants or the legacy of slavery. PR2 addressed the loopholes surrounding the 13th Amendment, as well as the loopholes we created here in the state of Vermont. We'll talk more about that. Before we go into this next segment, though, I would say that this is how Reconstruction ended. This is partially how it ended. It was Rutherford B. Hayes and James Tilden. It was an election, and it was, I believe it was somewhere around 1876. And the election was a tie, essentially. It was hung up in a couple states. I don't know whether that sounds familiar or not. And what happened was the Republicans, who were then the they were the abolitionist party at the time, made a deal with the Democrats, who were the Dixie South, the landowners. They said, hey, we'll take the White House and we'll remove the federal troops from the South. And it was from that point where Reconstruction collapsed. Why do we not hear so much about this in our schools? Could it be that what we would have to do is we would have to acknowledge that we were once a nation that was well on our way to equality, to equity. We were well on our way to establishing a more perfect union as a nation. Take a look at this slide. What I have is a couple things I want you to look at, and I'm going to give you a few slides just to get you caught up on some of the things that we've done over the last several years. So I'm just going to run you through some of the things that we've done because I want to bring you up to where we are right now so we can better understand where we're getting ready to go. Some of you remember that. That's a thing too. If you're looking at that red barn with, you remember Take Back Vermont, which, you know, kind of sucked. So we just played on that and just kind of crossed that out and put Change Vermont. And that was our thing. That was our shtick in 2019 and 2020. And these are some of the policies that we move forward. You'll notice reparations is there. We went and did some policy around law enforcement, data collection, and then of course PR2. That's when we started the work on PR2. Keep following. For those of you who are in the Burlington area, good afternoon, Burlington, good evening on your way home. Remember Operation Phoenix Rise? Restructuring public safety, implementing cultural empowerment, securing equal opportunity, expanding racial equity, belonging, and inclusion. So that was what we were doing there. You know, I will pause here for a minute because I want to remind some of you what we said we were going to do with the work we were doing with Operation Phoenix Rise and that historic, city council resolution that came out of it, the Hightower resolution. We said we were going to refocus on who and where and what we were policing. There was going to be some robust community engagement and a department assessment and analysis. And then we were also going to look into the wellness of law enforcement. What we were looking to do was not what Murad is telling us every day. That wasn't our story. Our story was to divest and reinvest from this apparatus, which at the time was budgeted far beyond what anybody else was seeing. And what we were going to do is redirect that into other areas, and that included the implementation of a cultural empowerment center, which by resolution we said we were going to do. We haven't seen that yet, but we did say we were going to do that. Which ultimately became the Richard Kim Center, and that's what you're looking at there. So just want to keep it clear, this is the work of the Vermont Racial Justice Alliance here in Burlington. What you're seeing now, it resembles what we'd envisioned, but it's not necessarily where we were hoping to take it. In fact, inside of the city, there was a complaint management system that we had wanted the mayor to consider, because with the expansion of the Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Office, because at the time that we put this out, there was only one person in the office. We wanted to expand on training, outreach, policy, and data, but we knew that more than likely there would be more black and brown people working for the city of Burlington than ever in history. So we also wanted to create some other apparatuses within the city to be able to care for them so they didn't fly out of here. I wanted to also make sure you understood, and this was 21-22, what we were doing here in the city. This is statewide: acknowledge, create, and transform. So this is commensurate to the 2019 and 2020. It is a legislative agenda. That's how it's commensurate. So this is the acknowledge, create, and transform. And you'll see, again, we came back with this is when we actually introduced PR2, which was the constitutional amendment. And also, you see we brought reparations back, again, because it died on the wall. I would say that, we can come back to that. And then the racism is a public health emergency, which is the joint legislative resolution. And I think folks need to get this clear. There's a joint legislative resolution, but then there's also here in the city of Burlington, the mayor's, his declaration. And then even our city council passed a resolution. There are three. public health emergencies, just so you know. Home and land ownership, we supported that. That's the land access and opportunity board that exists today. There's also the economic empowerment. We'll talk more about that. That is our economic equity bill, which hung on the wall all last year. I don't know why, because there's $5 billion that came into state over the last couple of years, but we will be re-engaging the legislature on that. Act 33 is what we introduced as health wellness, the Health Equity Advisory Commission, which I chair now. So that's there. Also, obviously, cannabis equities and quality of life outcomes. We can come back to some of that. So just want to make sure that folks are understanding. There's that joint resolution that I told you about, that folks are understanding that there's a lot of work that's been going into eradicating systemic racism. In fact, our whole campaign on systemic racism was all about making sure that the word was getting out. The whole campaign on abolishing slavery, rather, we were making sure that the word was getting out on systemic racism. That's what we wanted to do. Here's a cute little representation of what's going on in Burlington Reparations Task Force. But this was also a component of Operation Phoenix Rise, the Burlington Reparations Task Force. We also encouraged the mayor to move $1 million into a fund for racial equity. We were able to account for about $300,000 of that. We have no idea where the other $600 went, but that's another thing that's kind of hanging out there. But these are the things that we'll be giving more updates about as we move into the new year. As you can see, we're doing so many different things that we just haven't had time to come back and engage the community and make the community aware of some of the things that are happening and the status and the update on them. So for that, we don't apologize, but we definitely would like you to know about some of the other things that we're doing. This is that Cultural Empowerment Center. We know that these systems have been ineffective, inefficient, and non-existent. These programs and services, this is that cultural conduit that takes us into the community, so we can make sure what we're doing is we are serving this community. So there's a bunch of programs and services that are spinning up things that what we know we're not reaching folks in other areas. It's good that we do have programs and services in other parts of the city. This is for the first time in history, and I'm honored to be talking about this, in terms of Richard Kemp and framing it around Richard Kemp, my father-in-law, because I know he sat in his chair as well. So yeah, definitely focusing on what the Kemp Center is doing and how do we put tennis shoes on the work that we're doing and get into the community to be able to organize in community, to be able to provide the relevant programs and services. I just threw a couple slides in here on the end before I close this segment out, just to let you know that our data team continues to do the hard work. You can go out on our website. What we're talking about is disparities. We're talking about disparities that exist across all systems of state government. We're benchmarking it, ACS information. We're also comparing it across the nation. You're able to drill down into some of these dashboards, and then we even have qualitative data and heat maps on the website. So folks who are watching, go out there and get your data. I think there's three things that we do with data. We benchmark, we measure our progress, and then we also inform our calculated and our strategic approaches in mitigation and moving forward. At the end of the day, it's all about systemic racism. Systemic racism is a legacy of slavery. Don't forget about our outreach and education. I want to flag that today. And the reason why I'm bringing all of this to you now is because, look, folks, this is the close of the year. This is some of the stuff that we need to be talking about, some of the things that we should be making you aware of on a regular basis. As we close the year out, I just want to encourage you. You can go out to VTRacialJusticeAlliance.org, or is it racialjusticealliancevt.org, something like that. So go out to the website. The control room will look it up. So go out to the website, and that's our website now, just for some odd reason it slipped. You can also go to richardkempcenter.org. That's definitely a place where you can get some additional information. But want to make sure that you are following some of the work that we're doing. The new thing that we started doing over the last year or so is community engagement and support, more community engagement and support. So we're leaning into, definitely we've been thousands of dollars that's gone out the door with personal assistance and business grants. And economic empowerment is something that we continue to work on. Home and land ownership, our partners at CHT, we're working on some arrangements with them to better support the community as well as the Chittenden County regional planning folks, but supporting our small businesses and leaning into some opportunities for skill development. So just wanted to make sure that you were aware of some of the things that we've been doing throughout the entire year. Cultural empowerment, just to flag that the First African Landing Day is our day. It has been it has been proclaimed as a holiday for the state of Vermont by the governor. That is our 1619 commemoration. And what we did is we wanted to do that to make sure that folks understood the contribution and the resilience of Black folks since 1619. Don't forget about our wellness working group. There's a lot of stuff coming out of that. It actually informed our Health Equity and Advisory Commission. So I'll stop right there for a minute. We'll come back to me, and I'll just tell you that there's just so much going on with the Vermont Racial Justice Alliance in the work that we're doing. I'm going to give you some highlights of what we're going to do tomorrow evening at the Richard Kim Center. Stop in there. I'm going to start in around 6 o'clock. There's so much conversation about this whole idea of systemic racism. There's a slide for you there. This thing about systemic racism, again, the reason why we elevated this work through the proposal, the PR2, the Constitutional Amendment, the reason why we flagged this, keep in mind, we've been doing work parallel to, as you can see, not just in policy, but in community, in outreach and education, in community support, and also in cultural empowerment. So we've been working on all sides to chip away at this thing, but this thing is a beast. The unjustly gained political, economic power of whites, continuing economic and other resource inequalities along racial lines. This thing is a beast. White racist ideologies and attitudes created to maintain and rationalize white privilege and power, the source of overt racism. So there's so much to unpack in this, and it's so important. If you can pick the book up, swing by the Kim Center. I might have one laying around for you. Joe Fagan and Kimberly Ducey, Racist America, Roots, Current Realities, and Future Reparations. We've got to get after this thing. I want to tell you, I'm going to give you a little preview of this session that we're going to be having at the Kim Center. Here's the thing, and this is a great place to start too. Now listen, it's really important for those of you who are watching. I'm giving you some stuff that you have probably never seen before, because we've got to, as our other presentation said, turn the curve on systemic racism. You know, we've got to get to a point to where we stop talking about it and we start doing something about it. The problem is, and nobody really wants to say it. Few people really want to admit this, but a lot of times we're talking, just like the intro to this whole segment, it's like, what is it? What the same thing that, the question that I asked with Reconstruction, we can ask that with systemic racism, because it's not, I'll take you back a slide. It's a hard one to get your head around, because you immediately, you go to this whole thing, well, I'm not a racist, or it becomes an overt conversation. We've got to be able to identify where some of this stuff lives, where it is, what it looks like, what it smells like. And what I'm telling you is it is insidious. There are various constitutional clauses, there are various statutes, there are various institutions and rules, there are various policies, there are various systems that collectively work to insidiously produce disparate outcomes. When we criminalize poverty, why is that so important? Well, if you spend 2 centuries ensuring that there's only a certain category of folks that are mostly poor, Black folks, because most Black folks are poor, those are the numbers, then you criminalize it. Well, this is reminiscent to convict leasing. So when we start looking at, say, for example, Title 13, it says if you don't pay your debt, Title 13 is criminal law here in the state, then we're going to come and issue a warrant and come and arrest you. Come on, y'all. You got to see what I'm talking about. The voting laws. Why is it that 49 states are passing voting laws that are trying to make it harder for black people to vote? This is a part of a larger system. We won't even get into the electoral system, and the electoral college is pretty much in your face. Then as far as the filibuster, yeah, that is not just a legacy of slavery. I mean, that's it again, in your face. It's right here. So there are so many ways in which we can look at this. You start taking a look at the fact that there is, today, and we're going to talk about this next year. We're going to talk about this a little bit next year. What we're going to do is we're coming in on closing pretty quick, but what we're going to do is we're going to spend some time talking about this thing called we call it the Freeman Clause, the Freeman Clause. And the Freeman Clause is simply this. It's just that within our Constitution existed, and I'm going to tell you where it came from, I'm going to tell you where it went, and I'm going to tell you what it impacted. But within our Constitution, there was clauses that were placed in our Constitution that defined who could vote and who could be elected, and also who could vote for a constitutional amendment. And they were called freemen. And we'll talk more about that. I won't go much into it, but what it essentially did is it created, over a 200-year period, a voter suppression on steroids like you've never seen. And people still running around asking why Vermont is so white. So there are so many things that we got to unpack in this conversation about systemic racism and where it lives and where it came from. There is, the tax system itself. We'll unpack this. Next year, over a period of time, we'll get a chance to talk about the precedents in the court system. I mean, even today, here's a story for you. So last night, I'm at the judiciary's DEI meeting, and they're talking about how, yada, yada, they went away, for a year, and they created this DEI thing. The Chief Justice is sitting there, blah, blah. And, and one of the things I say to him is, hey, we'd like to work with you, because obviously they've already gone in and they figured out what they wanted to do, and they came back and they just want to have, they want to engage the community. Hey guys, this is what we're doing. And then they want to just do some trauma voyeurism. So all of us are not connected to the criminal justice system. Equal justice under the law doesn't mean that I am necessarily, me as a black man, appearing in court as a criminal defendant. The truth is that every single system, housing, education, employment, health services access, economic development, the so-called criminal justice system, every single one of them, because they are currently producing disparate outcomes, we have to do something to mitigate that. Here's the problem. Remember the 14th Amendment? That was one of the Reconstruction Amendments. Okay, so the 14th Amendment, what it was written for was to provide, besides making us citizens actually humans, because before the 14th Amendment, we weren't considered to be people. We were still 3/5, but we'll come back to that. But besides that, what the 14th Amendment was doing is it was saying equal protection under the law. It was protecting us. It was making sure that we got a fair shake. For those who are having a hard time with this, go back to kindergarten, fair and square. So here's the thing. The Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment has been hijacked, and it has been weaponized, and it is used to claim reverse discrimination every time we try to go in and fix the disparities that we know exist. So back to my story last night, the question that I had for the justices, and justices, if you're watching, I still have the question, would you be interested in sitting down with us and collaborating and working with us as we continue to develop a constitutional amendment that will buttress our state constitution? It will buttress our state constitution so the equal protection, the equivalent of the equal protection clause in our state constitution, will refortify our position and our values in the contemporaneous notes that we use to accompany that and to explain it. will be enough for us as a state to say, no, enough is enough, not in our state, just like we did with women's reproduction rights, just like we did with cannabis, to be able to say, yeah, feds, we got that, but no, we're not doing that here because that's not our values. Or is this not that important? Because every single one of those systems that I just named, in order for us to really, at the end of the day, come on, let's stop playing around. We can keep collecting data until the cows come home. We can do policy, we can do training, and I'm not saying we don't do it. Welcome to Reconstruction, Reverend Mark Hughes, Vermont Racial Justice Alliance. I'm trying to take you there. We're going to be talking about this all next year. So if we know that everyone, we can also do some racial impact assessments on policy. I know it all. We can look at our appointment processes. We can look at every single one of our appointment processes and we can say, yeah, how do we modify that? But at the end of the day, if we know and we've got quantitative data, and we do have quantitative data that explicitly tells us that we are having consistent and insidious disparate outcomes across every single one of these systems, at some point or another, we have to come to terms with there must be not race neutral, but race directed policy. Policy that says we need to go in here and make this right for these black folks, right? Or the other option is we let them continue to use the very constitutional amendment that was created to protect us, to keep us from being able to reduce, at least minimize these disparities. So I laid a lot on you. So the justices last night, besides getting it mixed up and thinking I was talking about the Fourth Amendment,
which buildings would be affected, and I think
really not taking me very serious when I corrected them and told them the 14th Amendment.
That this doesn't affect any existing residential, existing small business.
But the thing is that, you know, I'm not hearing anything from them. So we'll continue. We're going to do the Constitutional Amendment. It'd be great to work with you and not, it doesn't need to be adversarial. We should be working. All of this stuff, we should have legislators lined up trying to do this work. So I get distracted, but I'm going to take you back to this slide in these last couple seconds here, maybe, just for this slide right here. But these are some of the other ones. You start thinking about the public engagement process, the federal, the state funding criteria. Why is it that $5 billion, $6 billion, maybe $7 billion came into the state last year and they couldn't fund an economic equity policy to address systemic racism? Why is it that that money, two-thirds of the last $1 billion is not even spent? Why is that money not making itself up? Again, systemic racism is a political and economic divide along racial lines, okay? King said it best, we can't fix this without a radical redistribution of political and economic power. So why is it that we're still trying to figure out, you know, what to do about this money? I don't know. So in some of the things that I want to leave you with, and this is what we'll do at the Kemp Center, we're going to go over some of this in depth. And this will be my last slide and we'll take it home. Some of these things that I want you to take with you now is this is what you do about systemic racism. Look for it, watch the money, see where it's going. This is within your organization. This is within your activity, whatever it is that you're doing, alerting the system. Hey, calling it out. When policies are inequity, speak up. Stop being silent. Now's a good time. I mean, with all of the work we've done until now, at least leverage the latitude that we've given you in the work that we've done and speak up and say something. Escalate immediately. Organize. Get more people around this so you're not talking about this by yourself, because if you're by yourself, you're going to lose. Demand transformation, not change. And also target specific policies and start at home. Stop pointing at everybody else and saying, he's a racist, that person, oh my God, look at Trump and all that other stuff. Look at you. Look at the folks around you and stop trying to water stuff down. Thank you for that slide. I'm telling you, we got a lot of stuff to tell you. I'm going to be at the Richard Kemp Center's Mark Hughes, Reverend Mark Hughes, the Vermont Racial Justice Alliance. There is a lot of stuff to tell you. There is the VTRacialJusticeAlliance.org. You can go over there. We don't usually beg for money, but it is the season. So if you want to give us, help us out a little bit, we would appreciate it. Go over to richardkempcenter.org. Check us out over there. Come back here second Wednesday of next month. Got something for you. Meet me at the Richard Kemp Center on Thursday evening at 6 p.m. Want to tell you more about Reconstruction. Happy holidays. God bless you all. Good night.